Alright guys, my name is Metacouple and today, just able to make a very quick video today since I've got to go pick up a friend from the train station in half an hour. And what I'll do, I thought I'll just talk about my experience of the game, like a bit of an update from the last video, about 2 to 3 months into the game and what I've been doing. Mostly talking about what I've been doing at Endgame. So as you can see, my slash played there is 14 days. That's probably like quite low compared to most people in my experience. I've seen a lot of streamers that do the slash played and it's like nearly double that, and I've played 5 days at this level, so I haven't been playing the game like a massive amount, I would say, and that's because largely, my time is like used up by actually making videos rather than actually just chilling out and playing the game. Obviously, a lot of YouTubers have basically kind of moved over from YouTube to Twitch, which means they can play the game more because the majority of the time they're streaming the game, but I would prefer to, stay making videos for you guys. But anyway, I'm going to talk about what I've been doing. I obviously got to level 60. Getting to level 60 was fairly slow for me, to be honest, because I'm not very, I wasn't very experienced with the rogue class. I did spend a lot of time leveling up my professions and stuff like that. So what I did when I got to level 60, I was in the guild, I was in offline chat, which is Anifusia's guild, and I noticed that a lot of people in that guild were massively ahead of me in terms of progression. They were already doing Molten Core, Killed Onyxia and all that, and I wanted to be in a guild that was kind of doing the content kind of like at the same level as me. I wanted to be in a guild that was on the same progression as me. So I decided to switch guild. I had a look on the forums and I saw this guild called Cyrus, which seemed pretty cool. I'd actually leveled up with a few people in that guild, so I thought I would apply. And the guild I'm in basically right now is a really, really seriously good guild, and I would like to call them like quite a serious guild. It's not a guild that just like kind of mucks about. You can't get an invite just by asking for an invite. You need to make an application, and then you need like a mini interview before you actually get accepted to the guild, which is something I really like. Even if you want to be a social member, you do need to write an application, which means that there aren't any knobheads in the guild, if you know what I mean. There aren't like weirdos or people who've just been randomly invited into the guild who are like spurging the chat or anything like that. So it's a really great, strong, friendly community, which I'm pretty happy to be a part of, because it's been a long time. I've been playing WoW for a long time and I've just not been able to get into a good guild really. My guild focuses a lot on obviously raiding, which is what I've been doing in this phase, but we are going to be transitioning into doing a lot more WoW PvP. We want to become a pretty dominant PvP force, or basically get a dominant PvP reputation on the server, which I think we are already working towards quite well, to be honest. As you can see by the background footage that I'm going to put on this video, a lot of guilds, horde guilds, have started targeting us and spying on us. That is our theory anyway, because obviously a lot of horde last night were waiting at the Blackrock Mountain entrance, and it was just a coincidence that night we decided to use an Omnibuff for our Molten Core raid. And we ended up absolutely owning them, which is obviously a perk. You could see that like a lot of mages were preparing to use Sapper Charges and Arcane Blast and all that kind of stuff to kind of gank us, but we actually pulled through and just absolutely annihilated them, because the PvP leaders and raid leaders in this guild are seriously well organised and very intelligent and very strategic, and we normally pull through in most WoW PvP fights. There's a few, like for instance, we finished an Onyxia raid a few weeks back, and there was horde raiding Stormwind, thinking they could get an easy kill on Bolvar, and we'd literally just come out the mage portal to Stormwind to basically sort out the job. We turned up, went to Stormwind Keep, and just absolutely destroyed them without that much effort. We're basically becoming a really strong dominant PvP force on the server, and that is something that I do actually enjoy more than raiding. But the issue is, like, I don't feel like I'm that great at PvP yet. I feel like I need a lot more practice before I become good at PvP, because most of the time as a rogue, all you can really do, or the only way you can really be useful, is scouting, which I've started to do a little bit. When we're getting ready for raids, I do scout certain like walking paths to the raid, trying to figure out where the horde are, tell my raid whether it's clear or not. As far as raiding goes, it's been going pretty smoothly. I think we only wiped on Onyxia once before we killed it, and when we were raiding Molten Core, fairly little to no wipes all the way through, and we didn't defeat Ragnaros the first week because we didn't have enough time, because there was a bit of drama. Well, not a massive amount of drama, but like there was a bit of a nasty member in the guild who was like basically just be nasty to another member, and they just got kicked on the spot, which is another thing I really like, because that person was just being really nasty, like insulting the intelligence of another member, and they just got kicked on the spot, and I really did like that. And that means we had to cut the raid early on our first week, but the second week we went back and we killed Ragnaros first attempt, so basically a one-shot on Ragnaros. I don't think I stayed alive, but oh well. Most of the time when we kill Ragnaros now, I do actually manage to stay alive, because I remember to bring my fire protection potion. So the raiding is going really well. We've got basically all the raids on farm. The raids are, fairly easy. We can complete Molten Core. We're roughly finishing it in about just over 2 hours, I think, 2 to 3 hours. So not that long. Obviously we are working to increase that speed, because, the faster we can get through it, the better, really, because obviously the content right now is, well, it's on farm, and it's getting a little bit boring, which is why the guild is transitioning into making a WoW PvP team. So that would be interesting, when Phase 2 comes out, and I think I do want to transition into more doing PvP, because in all honesty, I'm obviously playing the combat sword spec, and I've been playing it for so long now that I think I'm just like a tiny little bit bored of the spec, and I'd like to, basically I'm bored of getting absolutely owned in WoW PvP situations, and I think I'd like to spec into a subtlety spec, and go daggers instead of going swords, but I'm only going to do that in Phase 2. So my plan is to really go out into the open world and just start, picking some fights, practicing ganking people, practicing my openers, and just practicing PvP in general. I'll probably go to like Daimor, Blackrock Mountain, and areas like that just to practice, because I do want to eventually like respec into a really optimal PvP spec. And I know I probably won't be able to put out as much raid DPS, but I think I'll have much more fun playing a subtlety spec, because let's be honest, subtlety it's the proper rogue spec. It is the real rogue spec. Specking daggers and going subtlety is the real way to play a rogue. Let's be honest, that's where rogue gains a fierce reputation from. It gains its fierce reputation from the ganking subtlety insane stupid spec, right? The the naked gankers from those videos back in the day where people were ganking people in no gear at all, because subtlety spec is just so ridiculously overpowered. There's so many ways that you can reset the fight to obviously totally put the fight in your favour. So that is something I'm looking forward to experimenting with, but I do sense that rogue is honestly pretty difficult class to master, and again, that's going to be probably quite a fun process. I'll talk you through my gear very briefly. I've got some pretty decent gear. I've got most of the pre-raid best in slot gear, most of it anyway, and I've managed to grab myself about 3 epic pieces, I think. Yeah, so 3 pieces of Night Slayers. I don't think I have any more epic pieces than that. However, I do have Onyxia's head in my bag, which I'm going to obviously save for a raid night. So I do technically have the epic necklace. That's why I haven't gone for the Mark of Forging, whatever it's called. I also got some really cool loot the other day, probably one of the most useful items in the game, and that is Finkel's Skinner. So the guild has been farming this for an extreme amount of time. I think we did something stupid like 50 runs of Upper Blackrock Spire, and it simply did not drop. Eventually it did drop for someone else in the guild, so we were sorted, but obviously you do need 2 optimally for the guild, and I got it in a random Upper Blackrock Spire Upper Blackrock Spire run, so that was very lucky. So now I've basically become the guild skinner. I can't swap out skinning for engineering or anything like that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep level working and skinning, see what money I can make by doing that. But obviously my main role now is to skin Onyxia on every single raid night. I get separated from the other guy with the skinning knife, because we obviously we normally do two raids of Onyxia, and we do that twice per week. That's what we're trying to aim for anyway, which means we can in total get 4 lots of Onyxia scales per week, which would be really great at obviously crafting the Onyxia cape for when Phase 3 comes out. And I think my general plan for when Phase 2 comes out is to actually spec into subtlety and enjoy subtlety for as long as I can, and then when Phase 3 comes out I'll probably respec into combat swords for the optimal DPS spec. Apart from this, my other plans are to obviously get my epic mount. As you can see, I've got like 500 gold right now. I'm really struggling to honestly farm gold, because like I said in my previous video, I do not enjoy farming gold in any shape or form. I do roughly make it like a decent amount of like 30 to 50 gold per day, but that's probably not optimal. I probably will have to man up and just do some gold farming. Maybe if it's even just like an hour every night just to get a little bit of extra gold. I can probably make 100 gold a day, which means I could probably get it in 5 days. If I really power it and go for it, I can probably do that. But at the end of the day, like, I just really hate gold farming, especially the rogue methods of gold farming, because I always seem to get really unlucky with pickpocketing. Like, I start pickpocketing, and literally 2 minutes in, I get a pickpocket resisted and have to wait like ages for my vanish. It's really irritating. I don't really feel like it's a very strong method, to be honest. What I am seriously considering doing is actually going to Scarlet Monastery and doing gold farming method there, because I have done that before and I was making really decent money doing that, and obviously you don't really need to rely on vanish too much. So I feel like that method might be better for me, to be honest, because you can just go in over chests very quickly, and you know, it's Bob's your uncle. You can get quite a lot of loot from doing that, and I might experiment with soloing bosses to increase the gold per hour. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about today. My name is Metagobble. Into my next video. Ciao.